What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to YGOPD, your Yu-Gi-Oh! Professional Development, and today I am back with a little bit of Master Duel content. I don't do this too often because I want to have a deck that I feel is good, showcases a few good replays. The last one I think I did was Paleo a while back. I had been on a Swordsoul kick for a while, and so during that time I was really enjoying using Swordsoul on Master Duel, so I want to go ahead and showcase that deck profile as well as a few replays with it on my climb through the Diamond tier from last season. But before we get into that, I of course want to give a shout out to all of our amazing new subs to the channel: Cody, Thomas, James N, B, James L, Loading, Beta, King, and Michael. Thank you all so much for joining the channel. If you would like to be a part of the next sub shout out, just make sure your subscriptions are public when you subscribe so I can see who you are and include you in that next sub shout out. Please be sure, if you do enjoy the content, dropping a sub, liking, and really hitting the bell. It does help the channel and does help smaller folks like me with the algorithm to pump things out to people who may be interested like you. But with all that said, we'll go ahead and hop in the deck profile and then slide on into some replays. Alright, as we're gearing in here, I will go ahead and throw up our wonderful Swordsoul deck profile. I wanted this to be as bare bones, and I really like mimicking it as close to the TCG as I can, outside of a few specific meta requirements of Master Duel cards like Max C. Otherwise, you're going to see a pretty similar deck list that you could take and play at your own locals. Obviously, this is excluding stuff like Bestials and things like that. But of course, nevertheless, I want to go ahead and showcase it. So at the time of recording, I was at the edge of Diamond tier and then kind of continued to climb through it. So I have a few replays to showcase after that. But for the main deck, it's pretty straightforward, not much to explain, except for maybe a few techs here and there in the extra deck. So unfortunately, our boy Longwan is of course hit down to 2 now. This was kind of at the tail end of the season, right before that happened, but still nevertheless, that in this profile, an easy cut is just taking that out to add a second Taya. But starting with the main cards here, the Tenyis, were obviously on 2 Adhara, 2 Vishuddha, 3 Ashina, and 3 Circle. Not much to really say there. Of course, the obligatory 3 Max C, an unfortunate necessity in this Master Duel format. 3 Ash, mainly as a generic hand trap as well as a way to counter Max C. Ghost Mourner is always a really solid card. It's a great Veiler, does damage, and with a deck like Branded being pretty high up in the meta right now for Master Duel, being able to stop their either Guardian Chimera or other cards on your turn are important. Of course, we still play the 1 Shatana for the Circle, and then the 3 Moye and 1 Taya. Never punished with that Desires, except for maybe 1 or 2 times. But of course, you can just cut the 3rd long one for that 2nd Taya, and that is of course what I had done. After that, we of course play 3 Ecclesia, are now 2 long one, 3 at the time of recording here. Then, like I said earlier with the Tenyis, we just have those 2 Vishuddha and those 3 Ashina. Outside of that, we do play the 2 Desires. No reason not to play that consistency piece. 3 is just a little bit much still, I think. 3 Emergence, obviously playing the Rhoda. The second called by is kind of a necessary evil for cards like Max C. Like we said earlier, we do play the 3 Heavenly Dragon Circle, and then rounding the deck out, we do have those 3 Infinite Impermanents, as well as the 1 Blackout. The extra deck is going to look a little bit different. 1 Yazi, nothing too crazy there. 1 Crimson Blader, this is my tech. You might see this against tier right now, actually in the main meta, or Branded. Kill something by battle, they're locked out of 5 or higher monsters, really powerful. Baxia, at least at 1, you could bump it up to 2, but the spin is really relevant on turn 2, or the ability to extend through hand traps on turn 1 by dumping Moye is important. Berserker, 2 Chijiao, pretty standard. Of course, the 1 Baron, the 1 Cheng-Yi, my favorite card. I fell in love with this card by playing this deck a lot. Of course, the 1 Sovereign, the 3 Monk, and then the 1 Shaman, 1 Draco Masters, and the 1 Sasahara. I probably butchered that, but that's what you use to out certain untargetable things, or unaffected things, more so, making a token as big as it and then crashing in. Really helps deal with cards like Mega Clops or Final Sigma. Just getting a token and crashing directly into it is a really nice and clean way to out it, and it's actually a really decent boss if you're in mid to late game and you don't really have good synchros at that point that fit the situation. This does a pretty good job. So with all that said, that's the deck in a nutshell. We'll go ahead and hop into the replays. Okay, so at the start of the season, I hadn't played this for a while. We started in the silver tier because of how we'd been bumped a little bit, and I figured silver is a good place to start. You're not really going to get much semi-decent content from anything below that, so I try to have one from each. We got a silver, a gold, a platinum or two, and then obviously a diamond. So one from kind of each little section here, but we'll go ahead and start our first match here. Hand is pretty good. Tenyi's our combo, plus the long one for follow-up, and at least a DD Crow hand trap. We're going to go ahead and make the Ashina in the Monk. You're going to see a couple slight changes in the deck. Originally, I was on Crow in the lower tiers, mainly to force out stuff with Chengying in the early stages of the match. So that is just really cool that you can do that whenever. But I'm going to stop talking and I'll let this replay go out. So a very basic replay here in the beginning stages, just showcasing Chengying as a card. I want to give it some love. It's really cool. I hadn't had the chance to mess with it too much, and really fell in love with using this card. It is such a powerhouse. You're going to see Chengying alone pretty much carry everything by saving itself from the Kaiju Slumber, getting rid of the Slumber in the grave for follow-up, and then just on the following turn being able to clean it up nice and easy with an easy concession from our opponent. And we'll go ahead and hop right into the next one. Alright, and our next one is against Numeron. This is kind of a nice kind of play on the deck to shout out that even when hands aren't great, you want to wait and see how it plays out. Sometimes unwinnable situations can just work themselves out. And I think this is a pretty good example, especially through a card like Maxi. We still have a couple hand traps, a couple interruptions, and a little bit of follow-up. We'll let this play out. It's a good one. And this is why we play the Sasahara, as well as obviously the one of Blackout, holding on for that situation for dear life to come up. Thankfully, we got there before we ran out of follow-up. They knew what we had and then just scooped. Not much you could do there. Okay, our next replay is getting into a bit of the platinum tier here, just continuing our climb. I needed to show this because I don't know what it is with my curse, but Ash Blossom is a card that sticks to my hand like glue. This is one of the many replays where 2 to 3 Ash had been appeared in my hand throughout this climb, and it was not even with Swordsoul. I tried switching up decks, and Ash just decides to be in my hand all the time. Ironically enough, you're going to see it come up a few times. This is a really good match that is going to showcase even with a bad hand and your opponent playing incorrectly, they can still just top deck out of anything. But nevertheless, I'll stop talking and let this one play out. And just absolutely ridiculous on capitalizing on every piece of advantage our opponent just kind of threw away there. They still had the one imperm for the Taya and just hit the extravagance, was able to keep going, and just that third Ash actually coming up, believe it or not, and still having the Egon that we knew they added back. And sadly, that just wraps it up. Flunder is just always a pain. So we'll let this one kind of finish up, and then we'll just accept our defeat and move on. And of course, the one unknown card just had to be Infinite Impermanence. Of course, they still had the Eagle, and we knew they added back. And even on top of that, cycling through Ash and every little misplay they had, sometimes it's just not enough, and they truly just get all the grace in the world. Of course, we draw Max C for the Flunder player as our final card to hit the nail in the coffin. But we'll go ahead and throw on to the next one. Okay, and these last few here are from Platinum climbing into Diamond. I think we have one up against a Dragon Link, a Train player of all things in the higher ranks, which was really interesting to see how they built that deck. And then rounding it off out in the top tiers is of course a way to finish it up playing against Branded. So I'll let these three play out and we'll go on from there. Of course, Cheng Ying being the king of that non-targeting removal, helping clean things up alongside Baxia, and then following it up with a Desires. What more can you ask for? They will concede, and we'll go ahead and move on to the next one. All right, moving on here, a really interesting match against a Train player. You'll see it's a very interesting deck. It seems very more going second, OTK focused on the kind of rank 10 engine here. And you'll see some really neat, skillful things on how they kind of move about it. Unfortunately, Trains is just not enough, even in Master Duel, to still compete with a deck like Swordsoul, unless you get really lucky, which they really are trying to. but I'll go ahead and let this one play out. You'll see some neat things on their end, which I think is still worthy to include. And being able to clean things up rather nicely, making that right call on just saving that imperm, thankfully not getting hit with that Zeus preemptively. Either way, it would have done the same purpose, but that lets us pretty much just clean it up. So we'll get the Adhara here, make our favorite boy Cheng Ying, burn for 12, make the monk, and then just banish to add follow-up, and then that's pretty much it. Cleans it all up nice and easy with Cheng Ying, and then we just go ahead and go for damage. And of course, we have to be wrapping it up with Branded. No other deck I think suits the top tiers of Master Duel like Branded certainly does right now. Really interesting match, quite back and forth for the first like one turn apiece, and then it kind of just falls apart. Really looking for that misstep on either side and us being able to take advantage of it. So I'll stop talking, let the last one roll out, and we'll wrap it up. And after a couple missteps, forcing a few things out, that's going to pretty much take it out for our opponent. that has been it for the deck profile, the replays. I hope you really enjoyed this. If you've not had a chance to play Swordsoul, like I'd never bothered picking up the deck until about a month ago, I've had a really good time with it, both in Master Duel and in the TCG. So really cool budget deck, gives you some fun, especially with the Bystials now and the TCG a little bit more competitive. But nevertheless, I just want to say thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Later.